Cyndi Weis is an inspirational speaker, wellness entrepreneur, mindfulness expert, and longevity leader with a passion for empowering individuals to live healthier, more vibrant lives. As a dietitian, a 500-hour experienced yoga teacher, a certified master's in wisdom meditation teacher, a heroic public speaking graduate, and the owner of 2 successful businesses for 22 plus years, Breathe Yoga and Juice Bar and Breathe at Home, Cyndi is exceptionally equipped to educate and motivate people in their pursuits for optimal well-being, no matter their age. Cyndi's wisdom, backed by years of diverse expertise, provides fresh insights and actionable takeaways that encourage others to strive for their best selves. Whether it's in their personal or professional lives, her signature superpower lies in her ability to connect with people on a deep level, empowering them to unlock their potential and live optimally. Cyndi, thank you so much for being here today.
Cam, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. And like I was telling you, that's a powerful bio right there. And I'm sure we have a lot to dive into. I think it's going to be a great show. So start us out by bringing our audience back to the beginning of your journey as an entrepreneur. How does everything begin for you?
Well, looking back even beyond the obvious of Breathe Yoga, it now all makes sense to me. I mean, when I was a kid, I was going door to door selling pencils when I was just a young kid. But I also, when I really think about when it became clear, it was, I was on summer vacation from school, I think probably like in junior high. And I remember looking in the newspaper at the classifieds, and I'm from a small town in Pennsylvania called Bradford. Anyway, I responded to this classified ad, called an 800 number, and this woman shows up at my door, and she's like, I'm here to see Cyndi. And I'm like, that's me. And she's like, oh, no, I'm here for the request to become an Avon representative. Is your mom here? And I'm like, well, my mom's here, but I sent in the request. So I don't even know if you guys know what Avon is. No. You don't, it's so funny. So back in the day, there was something called Avon, and it was like door-to-door sales of beauty products. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I was 15 years old, so I didn't even use any of these things, but my mom signed off on it, so I became an Avon lady and went door to door with my little suitcase of makeup and perfumes and whatever. And my mom would drive me to my territory, sit in the car and knit or something, and then as I'd walk down the street carrying my little suitcase, she'd come down a little further and we'd move on down through the territory. And I became one of the highest revenue-producing reps for Avon before I was even 17 years old. Wow. And they used to have banquets and meetings where they would honor the people winning the awards, and I could never show up because I was in school.
That is something.
Anyway, that's kind of where it all started. When I look back, I've sort of always been someone who looks at something and says, like, wow, like, I bet you other people would really want this. Mm. And so with Breathe, it really started that way too. I have a background, I'm a dietitian, so I have a nutrition background, and I had been a partner in a retail business for many years. I was introduced to yoga when I was 12 years old by my mom, so it's been in my life forever. And as my kids were moving from high school to college, and my husband was traveling 5 days a week, I thought, like, what am I going to do? Mm. And I had already done a lot of small entrepreneurial ventures, but I'm like, wouldn't it be cool to go to your yoga class, and as you're signing in for class, have a smoothie order ready so it's sitting there waiting for you when you're done with class. Maybe you check out a pair of cute yoga pants that I'm going to try those on afterwards. And wouldn't that be amazing? And that's what I did. And I remember going to my first banker looking for a loan, and they're like, no, I don't think so. Yeah. I'm like, well, I would want to do that. Mm. And anyway, they said no. Went to the second banker, and this time I told the story, and I said, I don't even want to make any money. I just want to be happy. My husband was along for moral support, and he kicked me under the table. He's like, you don't say that.
Yeah, banker's probably like, what?
No, but you know what? They gave me the loan, and this banker came to Breathe about every 2 or 3 weeks, sat at the juice bar, and just watched the flow, which at the time was very, very minimal. Mm-hmm. But over the years, I've paid back that loan and had many more, and it's all gone as kind of in my gut, I kind of just knew people might like it the same way I would have liked to have been that customer.
Yeah. Well, I love it. And here we are 22 years later. And I just want to say it's such a, like, if you're in Rochester, you know Breathe. I know Breathe. And my mom is a massive yoga head. And I don't know if you know her, Kelly Van Kerkhove, maybe.
Yeah,
She
I know that name.
I told her I was having you on the show. She's like, "Oh, I can't wait to watch this one." And she's been doing yoga forever as an instructor in many different places. But yoga itself is a practice that is just so good for the soul. And I should probably do it more. And my mom tries to get all of us. I'm one of 6 kids, so she tries to get all of us to go. She's like, "Someone come to yoga with me this morning," and Keegan's usually the one who ends up going with her.
Keegan
But
does.
yeah, I mean, it's such a talk about taking care of yourself mentally and physically. Whatever you choose to do, whether it's some form of working out or yoga, I think taking care of yourself, especially as an entrepreneur, it could not be more important when you're trying to make it in business.
100%. I mean, truly, as an entrepreneur, you are your business's best asset. And if you are burned out, stressed out, not happy, it's going to be totally reflected in your leadership, in your creativity, and just your overall sustainability. So I'm a big believer in self-care. I always have been. And I'm really, I've learned to just really, like, people are where they're, let people be where they're at in all things. And many people think that self-care is selfish. And I don't agree with that, because I really believe that in order to show up for anything and anyone else, you have to be feeling like the best version of yourself.
You got to fill your
And that
cup.
takes something.
Yeah.
Like it came easier in certain stages of my life, but now, if someone were to ask my husband, like, is Cyndi high maintenance? He might say, well, she is high maintenance, but she's self-maintaining. I'm not looking for anybody to do it for me. Like, I know what I need, and I do it.
Yeah.
And so, and I don't consider it selfish.
Right. I think that's interesting too. And I saw a quote the other day, and I don't remember. I wish for the life of me I could remember who it was, but it said, as a business owner or a leader, your business needs you healthy more than it needs you available all the time, right? And that sort of resonated, because I think a lot of business owners think that they have to be everything for everyone all the time, and then guess what gets put on the back burner? Themselves, right? And if you can't operate at a high level, like you said, mentally, physically, emotionally, there's no way you can show up for other people. So in your experience, when you talk to people that come into your practice, I guess you could call it, what do you think is some of those key benefits that people experience with this continued yoga and self-care emphasis?
I think that people come in for one reason and they stay for others. So I think in our culture, the biggest driver to yoga is physical. People come in because they either want to tone their core, they want to be more flexible, they want to hold a plank. So they come in. We teach a lot of hot yoga as well as other forms of yoga, but they come in for that sweat. So they're looking at it strictly from the physical, but I really don't believe that's why they stay. The physical happens absolutely, but there's also other pieces of it. Breathing is a big piece of yoga. And so when you really move from unconscious breathing that we do all day, every day, into really intentional breathing, conscious breathing, it shifts something in your nervous system that really has a profound effect on your mind and body. So when you finish with the yoga practice, you feel, it's like this halo effect. I mean, there's a physicality that feels really good, but there's this other like, ooh, what just happened there?
Yeah.
I like it. I'm going to do it again. And it also creates this mind-body awareness. Like there are times in my life when I was more physical into athletics as opposed to yoga. And I can remember going to the gym, hopping on the treadmill, putting my earbuds in, watching television, listening to music, and like, oh, wow, it's over, done. Hop off and go move on. That's a complete out-of-body experience. And it was one way to check the box, right?
Right.
Yoga's opposite. It's like from the moment that you go into your first pose, it's like bring your attention to your breath, bring your attention to your body. what's happening in your mind? Can you bring your attention here now? So it's like, oh, okay, yeah, wow, where was I? And it has a completely different experience and effect. And without being able to put your finger on it, I think that's what brings people back.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Because it's been interesting, having a yoga studio for 22 years. I've watched people come and stay. I've watched people come and go. I've watched people come, go, and come back. Yeah. And COVID was such an incredible experience to witness, because for all boutique fitness, which would be kind of what a yoga studio would be, we couldn't be in person, and we all had to shift gears and whatever. And so rebuilding from that was like rebuilding from scratch. But I just had this true belief that is proving itself to be true, is that anyone who ever really loved how they feel when they practice yoga on a regular basis, they'll be back.
Yeah.
And I see them coming back. Like, maybe it's been 5 years, but they're coming back. It's really incredible.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Why don't we go here? Because I was telling you before the show, objective, young entrepreneur listening. Let's say they want to start a yoga studio or some sort of fitness studio, just in general. What advice do you have for that person? If you can kind of take yourself back and think about what were the crucial things that you had to do, the skills maybe you had to learn to get traction, get your business going, get it off the ground, get customers. Any tips that you could give to someone who maybe wants to start their own yoga studio in 2025?
Yeah. The kernel of it is you have to have something that you're very passionate about sharing. That's the essence, really. As opposed to, oh, there's an opening in the market for something like this, maybe I could do that. If you do that, you may be successful working at your job, but if you do what you are passionate about sharing, you'll never feel like you're working. And passion is a more sustainable fuel than that pressure of like trying to like fit the needs of what everyone wants. So first is the nugget, like that you're coming from something that's really authentically you, and that your business is an expression of that. Secondly is don't necessarily wait to be ready, or you'll never do it.
Yeah.
Right? So many people get paralyzed in not doing anything because they need another degree, or they need to read another book, or they think they need a better business plan. My advice is like have a good idea of what your core values are that you want to bring into your business, and then be passionate. Like, no one could talk me out of, like I told you, the first banker said no. Well, that just meant I went to someone else.
On to the next. Yeah.
It was not a no.
Yep.
It was like, okay, not you, but you.
Yeah.
And I was just no was not an option.
Right.
And so you have to feel that way about it, so that you can really show up every day. Because I remember being told, the early stages of business, you're going to work more than you think, and it's going to take a while. No one ever said what a while was. It was a long while. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
But even though I showed up in my business daily for many years, for many hours, it's where I wanted to be.
Right.
And so it never felt like something that I had to do. So I think passion for what you're sharing is key. Not waiting until you think you have all your ducks in a row, because you never will.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It's like having a family. If you wait till you're ready to have kids, you will, believe me, you'll never have them. Right? You
That's
just have
really
to sort
cool.
of jump.
Yeah.
And then things become clear afterwards.
For sure. And I wanted to touch on this because, we've had, I think it's 3 different guests this week, and, more coming up. And such a common theme that I'm noticing is where successful entrepreneurs and business owners are deriving their fuel, like you said, to build out a business. And all of these successful, CEOs and leaders that we're interviewing, I'm obviously young and I'm learning on this, is that it doesn't come from like, I want to hit 7 figures. I want to hit $2 million, 20 locations. Those are good, maybe like short-term or long-term milestones, as like, okay, those are things that would be cool to hit. But the most successful people are deriving it from a place of purpose and passion, like you said, and kind of building on that, right? You've become arguably the most well-known yoga studio in all of Rochester, maybe even all of upstate New York. And with that sort of passion and purpose-driven leadership, how do you think that it's trickled down to your team members?
Wow, we've been through so many different stages of growth. So I don't know if you're aware, but I think maybe it was year 8 to 10, I franchised the business. And then we grew franchises, and we could have had many, many more, but I was extremely selective because franchise relationships are deep relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to make sure I was getting into relationships with people I wanted to be in with.
How many did you get up to?
We had a total of 7 locations between Rochester and Syracuse.
Wow.
And it wasn't until we got everyone was successful. And we made it through, we guided them through COVID. Everyone came out successful. And then it was after COVID that people just in life had found forks in the road, right? COVID did that to people.
Yeah.
So, somebody wanted to go back to school. Someone else was getting a divorce. Someone else, just wanted to go back to their old career that they had pre-breathe. And so I approached all of them and said, if we can make a unanimous decision to tear up our contracts and walk away, you can all take what you've learned and you can rebrand yourselves, using everything you've learned, and I will go back to being breathe. And so they did. I said, take 2 weeks. It's all or nothing, because cooking for 1 is as hard as cooking for 5. Your mom would tell you that, Kim.
Yes, she would.
So it has to be all or nothing. And they came back and they said, we want to do our own thing. And I'm like, okay. And it took about 9 months to unravel everything, because we were so commingled. We had over 5,000 gift cards in play locally that we had to untangle and parcel out to where they belong. And there's just a lot. But I can honestly say we did it amicably. We did it successfully. And the way that when someone asks me, what does that feel like now? For 10 years that I had franchises, I was running marathons, and I was trained, and they were okay.
Yeah.
But now I'm running a 10K. And it feels I'm very well fit for the job. It's like Breathe in Pittsford has always been the mothership. It's a 9,000 square foot operation with a spa and a juice bar and a kitchen and a bakery and a large retail environment, 2 studios, a sister store next door called Breathe at Home. So it's not some small venture, but the problems are my problems. I get to solve them in the moment, as opposed to decision by committee, making sure everyone can solve the problem the way that it needs to be solved. So to me, it feels simple.
Yeah.
You asked me about how my people feel about my staff. Business is a human experience, truly, right? And any business owner will tell you the most challenging part of business truly is the human experience, whether it be staff or whether it be customers. And I try to just approach business as if I'm truly sharing. I'm willing to do any part of the business at any time. I take out my own garbage. I vacuum my own office. I'm not looking for people to do anything I don't do. But at the same time, it's got to be. You've got to treat everyone as if, they're all part of this human experience that we're having together.
Yeah.
And that has really been helpful, I think, in keeping people happy. The other thing that I would tell anybody new is it's not about you. I have to remind myself all the time. Yeah. So when things are really good and everyone's congratulating me, I'm very clear it's not about me.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember that when an employee's leaving to go somewhere else, or a customer left and I don't know why and they're not coming back, it's not about me. Mm-hmm. People do what they need to do in their own lives for themselves, and I'm just a part of it, but it's not about me.
Yeah.
And that's really been helpful in just keeping me mentally on the straight and narrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, because we actually were having this discussion with a previous guest about truly being happy for your staff, for your employees, if they do decide, I want to go start my own thing, I want to do something else, because people can say that and be like, yeah, I'm happy for my people if they want to do. But inside you're like, man, I just built up this person. I just poured all this energy into them. But if you can truly come to terms with it inside your own heart, it comes across so much more genuine to the person, and they feel that. And karma is a real thing. Things come around, like you get what you put into the world. It comes back in ways that we don't even know sometimes. So it just comes down to being a good human at the end of the day, and putting relationships above any business profits, any of that.
Yeah. And you know what that takes? It actually takes or took me some practice.
I'm sure. Yep.
Because there were many, many moments earlier on where if someone left, I'd be like, what did I do wrong? Why are they leaving? Like, I took it so personally. And I don't know whether it's the length of time I've been in business or the fact that I'm 65 years old, that I've got life experience as well, to where I can really realize that everybody is just doing what they need to do for their own life and their own next step. It's not about me, and it's not against me, and it's not for me. I'm just either part of it, of what fits for them at the moment, or I'm not. And rather than burn bridges, and like that's just so not needed.
Yeah.
I don't want to have a weird relationship with anyone. I don't want to run into someone at Wegmans and have to go down a different aisle. I do not want that.
Yes.
I'm not going to say that there weren't times earlier on when I was less mature as a person and less mature as a business owner that maybe that's how I exactly felt, but I don't feel like that now.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting too, and something that I'm continuing to learn over time, leading the team, but also just talking to successful people like yourself, is that business owners, because they have a lot of pride in what they do, and rightfully so, right? They have passion for it. It's very easy to associate your self-worth and your value with performance, right? And that's really not the ideal way to look at things, in my opinion, because what ends up happening is if something doesn't go your way, a relationship gets burned, quote unquote, or a client walks away, it's easy for you to reflect and be like, I'm a failure. What I am as a person is not good enough. And realistically, like you said, it's always more about the other person involved. It just wasn't their time to work with us, right? Or that person had to leave for their own ventures and endeavors. So talk a little bit about that. I'm sure, with yoga, meditation, these practices, you've been cultivating self-awareness for years and years and years. Talk a little bit more about your journey with, separating your work and your performance from your value and your being.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the way that I feel now, like I said, I went through my own stages of growth, and I totally can relate to having experiences where I took everything personally, and it did sort of rock my own world if I didn't understand why someone was choosing something different. But I maybe should be embarrassed to say this, but I've never read a business book.
Really?
Like ever.
I love that you say that, actually.
Like never. But what I do read and what I do pay attention to is, I'm very much into self-awareness. So like The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, that'd be a book I'd highly recommend to someone for expanding their self-awareness. Or I look back at one of my most sort of impactful yoga teachers, Baron Baptiste. He used to say, like, come from I'm ready now. So like not yesterday, not when you're going to be ready in 2 weeks, but like right now, today, like what am I ready for? And then just really bring that, and don't get lost in, well, this happened, or what, maybe this won't work out. It's like, just be ready now. Take what's right here and work with this and stay present. And that has been truly a practice. And I feel so fortunate that I just happen to be, that business and self-growth collided for me in my life. And that's been my whole life. Like I've always been that curious person who's been introspective. Like I said, I was introduced to the practices really young, and I sort of phased in and out trying other things. But that just sort of the bigger questions about, like, what is it I want people to remember about me? I don't want them to remember, the number of figures I did in revenue. In fact, like I can't even remember from year to year. What I want is, I want like a legacy of impact, like that someone, whether I had anything to do with it or not, someone in their experience in a yoga class with a teacher, in a meditation, or just because we tend to really focus on seeing people. So like we get to know at the juice bar, we really put a lot of focus on learning people's names, what they like to order, and we use that. we don't just ignore it because people want to be seen.
Yeah.
And so if they remember, like, wow, I always felt really accepted there, feels very inclusive there, feels really kind of discomfortable there. To me, that's a legacy I would take.
I love that so much, and it resonates straight through my heart because that is my North Star too, is like at the end of my life, like no matter what I do in terms of businesses, ventures, building stuff, I want to know that every single person that I've come in contact with, I've worked with, I've partnered with, has worked with us, feels like, wow, they're doing something special and they're doing it different because they care genuinely about people. And I think in today's business world, that tends to get lost. The human connection and relationship, especially with technology, social media, AI, all of this artificial stuff, the ones who can come back to face-to-face. This is why I like face-to-face interviews over like Zoom and stuff. There's a different energy too in the room when you're talking to someone. But to kind of circle this back to what you were talking about, personal growth being so tied to business, you have to grow personally in order to succeed in business, at least in my opinion, because I've completely transformed myself from 2019 when I started my business, had no clue what the hell I was doing, to now. There's stepping stones, there's levels, if you will, you have to go through to become better at sales, better at marketing, leading a team, being a manager. There's all these steps you have to go through in order to get to the destination, but really it is just a journey of building something, because you have to change yourself first, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in an ideal world, every entrepreneur should be able to be standing in their business and look around and see it in some ways a reflection of themselves. And if it's not, if there's a real disconnect there, then you might be doing a good job, but you're probably doing a job, you know?
Yeah.
And when I look back at Breathe, the core of what it always was, you know, that experience of I want to go to yoga, I have a smoothie ready afterwards, trying a pair of pants, that's still the core. But we've expanded into meditation. I'm personally doing a lot of speaking right now on aging optimally, because that's what's relevant for me. And I want to share that. And it's about sort of, you know, like whatever I feel authentically passionate about, as long as I'm authentically passionate,
That's it.
that's what I've got to bring.
That's it.
You know, as opposed to, there have probably been times along the way where it's like, oh, that's a good idea. Or someone would tell me, some business person would tell me, that would be a really lucrative idea for you. And I'd be like, I don't know. It doesn't really sound like something I want to do. But anytime I've tried anything like that, it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just hasn't. It hasn't felt good. And because entrepreneurs are so like deeply invested in pursuing what they love, it's got to be a reflection of who you are. Otherwise, you're not going to love it, and you're not going to be able to put into it what you need to be sustainable.
Yeah, that flame will eventually go out.
Yeah.
For sure. And so, like everything you're saying is resonating really impactfully for me, right? Because, you know, at 23 years old, what I'm learning, and I love that you said that, you know, I haven't read a single business book. And me and Cam are sort of, we have different perspectives on things in terms of how we grow and learn as business owners, entrepreneurs, et cetera, right? Where Cam loves sort of the business development. He also loves the mindset stuff. I'm so passionate about growing emotional intelligence, self-awareness. I think that the number one skill a business owner and a leader needs to cultivate, no matter the age, is emotional intelligence and awareness. Because if you can't understand yourself, and again, you said, you know, the business should be in some ways a reflection of you. Well, if you don't know who you are, how is it going to reflect you, right? So you're looking around and you don't understand what's going on because you don't understand yourself. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is, for your journey, right, what are some of those key emotional awareness, I guess, techniques or just like the key things that you've learned to help increase your self-awareness and your emotional intelligence?
Well, baseline for me is yoga and meditation.
Yoga,
I mean,
yeah.
that's daily. I do that before I leave my house. I mean, that is what happens first thing. And, the yoga came very, very easily because that was the physicalness of what I loved. And I used to do it always like in class at my studio. And then after COVID, I just started practicing at home, and it just sort of stuck is the
Yeah.
first thing I do. And if I can still get to a class, I will, but at least I know it's done. It's like brushing my teeth. It's done. Meditation was the thing I was always going to get around to. So like as a yogi, it's like, yeah, I know I should meditate. I will someday when I've got nothing else to do.
Yep.
That's what a lot of people think.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then several years ago, about 9 years ago now, I got this really severe illness. And I went to many different doctors and many different specialists, and no one could figure out what it was. But it was real, and it was debilitating, and it was really running my life. Like I couldn't travel. I couldn't really, it was just a pretty profound thing that they couldn't figure out. And every time I would go to a new doctor or specialist, they'd say like, okay, so what about your stress? I'm like, I don't have any stress. They're like, well, come on, you have businesses and franchises. And I said, listen, I love my life. I have no stress. Move on. What else could this be?
Yeah.
And after I continued to keep searching for the answer, this little voice inside me kept saying like, it's you. It's you. Like it's something, it's not what you do, it's how you do everything. Can you
Wow.
resonate with that?
Yeah.
I can.
Yeah.
More than you know, actually, right now. I mean, I'm going through some stuff myself, and I can relate to going to different doctors, trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And, I have a gut condition right now that I'm working through, but I don't know what it is that you were going through, and you don't have to talk about it. But I think it's just the bigger concept of trying to figure that out and looking inward is what you were trying to get at, right?
Yeah. Mine was gut too. It was debilitating. It was terrible.
Do you mind talking about?
Yeah, it's really gross. But they eventually slapped a term on it called cyclical vomiting disorder.
Oh no.
Like every 3 weeks, I would just have like, almost like on the calendar, it was like I would just have like 12 hours of vomiting.
Gosh.
So it happened on a flight home from India. It happened when I was in New York at a buying trip and I couldn't get in a cab to go to the airport. It happened driving home from a class one day and I had to pull over on 590. I couldn't do anything
Right.
because I could kind of know about when it was going to happen, but no one could figure it out.
That's a nightmare.
But so I finally, like this little voice was like, it's time to meditate. It's time to meditate. I'm like, oh my gosh, but I've tried everything. I'd had all these tests. So I finally started meditating and my symptoms went away. After 17 months, every 3 weeks, really tangibly bad, they went away and they didn't come back. And the only time that I ever get this it's like this little flutter in my stomach that's like it's 3 hours before something would get bad. If I get that little flutter, to me that's like, okay, stress is manifesting itself in my body. For some people, it turns out as migraines. For some people, it's insomnia. For me, it was my stomach can't take it.
Wow.
And nothing was wrong in my life. My business was great. My relationships are great. Like I was happy as could be, but I was always at the starting line, feet against the blocks, like ready in such a way for life, like that I didn't know how to unwind it.
Yeah.
And meditation with conscious breathing and just really like taking that time every day to create like a pattern interrupt
Yeah.
is what it was. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but my symptoms went away. And my doctors never figured it out either.
It is. I'm just nodding my head over here because I appreciate you opening up to and being so vulnerable and sharing that, because I think a lot of people have things going on health-wise that they just can't figure out what the hell is going on, what's wrong with me. For me personally, I have a condition called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. I have too much bad bacteria built up in my small intestine that there are infinite amount of root causes that can lead to it. And I've been struggling with it for well over a year now. Some days are better, some days are worse. But lately, I have been noticing significant improvement. And to your point, it's been because my mind, and it not necessarily meditation, but I'm doing red light therapy, I'm taking walks, I'm just focusing on my breathing more, I'm getting myself in a better headspace, lowering stress. Even with all the supplements that this new functional medicine doctor has me on, I haven't even really started doing that. I've noticed just from my mind calming my physical body down, it's brought in all my symptoms down, and it's making me realize it's wild how the connection between our mind and our gut, they call that the vagus nerve. I've learned so much over the past year too, and I'm sure we could talk about this for hours offline, but I guess what I'm trying to say here is don't underestimate what your mind can do to heal your body.
Yeah.
100%.
No, that's really, it's funny that we're all like sharing these, because I am, you said it kind of can manifest in certain ways. And I think oftentimes for business owners, the concept of stress, it might not be like an immediate feeling. It's something that's almost like churning in the background, because we're so grind, right? And we think, okay, things are going well, like even if there aren't crazy issues. But it's only when you stop and you do the meditation, and I try to work it in, I do it 4 to 5 times a week as well, just 10, 15, 20-minute practice at night where I just sit completely still, and mind kind of interweaves my Christian faith and spirituality and prayer and stuff. But it's the difference between my night rest, because I've always struggled with sleep issues, when I meditate versus when I don't, or when I get those 3-day gaps where like, oh, I'm too busy, I can't meditate, which is a lie, by the way. It's significant. I mean, the difference is massive. And I would just encourage, like you've said, any business owner, any professional really, that is like in this season of growth, trying to constantly work, you need to take time to just reset and focus on your inner self. I mean, it's just drastic. So I really think it's interesting that we all have sort of that experience of working it in. Yep. It helps a lot.
And like culturally, like we are a culture that wants proof.
Yeah.
Back in India, yogis meditated because they knew they felt more connected to something greater. That's why they did it. Not us. We start with wanting like strong core and biceps and triceps, and we eventually get to meditation. But the thing about it is that there actually now is proof. And so meditation lowers cortisol. That's the stress hormone. With just literally small amounts, like 5-10 minutes, you can feel there's a measurable drop in cortisol in your body, so that you don't feel as stressed. There's an increase in dopamine, like that's the brain's feel-good chemical. You feel better. And that's measurable. So for people who are like, no, that's so woo-woo, I'm not into it. It's like, okay, well, start Googling the studies, because they're there.
Right.
And that's, I think, is like a turning point. And from a business perspective, most yoga studio owners won't actually give the real estate space or the scheduled time to meditation. It's kind of like selling snow to Eskimos in a way. What I mean? We're selling silence. We're selling breathing. Like, what are we really selling?
Yeah. Right.
Sharing is what I would call it instead of selling. But the reality is like, I can't not do that, because I know that played such a huge role in turning my life around. So I can't not do that. Mm-hmm. It may not be the most lucrative part of my business, but it's something that's so authentic that I can't not do it.
Yeah.
So we teach meditation online every morning live. And we have a handful of people that are there every morning live, and we meditate together. And, we have a few times in the studio where we do it, but generally people just sort of log on and there they are. But it's so important when you know that something is what you want to share. It doesn't matter if it's got the biggest return on investment, right? It just matters because you're really genuinely passionate about what you're sharing.
Yeah, that is like the whole antithesis of what I'm kind of understanding. It's like you got to be passionate about what you're trying to share, right? Because then you feel that, and Cam has said this multiple times, like when you came in, he said the real fuel for me is seeing people reach out to me and be like, this podcast is helping to change my life, right? That's what fuels you. It's not about the ROI. It's like with us, and I wish we'll get Keegan on here eventually, but his passion of creating videos that tell stories and help build brands and share emotion, same with my passion of producing and creating, that's what fuels me. Sure, if it's a $1,000 video, $10,000, 20, whatever. Like that's necessary to grow a business. I understand. But the real thing that keeps you going forward is saying like, I love seeing the client be like, this is going to change our brand, or this made us cry. Like we had a client that said, this made one of our employees cry. And that to me is like, that is a whole win on life, right? And I just think it's fascinating too with you. Like you're just so authentic about sharing an experience rather than, okay, we need the best margins. Like you said, meditation's probably not the most lucrative, but you don't care because that's not who you are, you know?
Yeah. Now I'll tell you a funny story. My background is I have a degree in nutrition and a degree in mental health counseling.
Oh, okay, cool.
And so my mantra for the longest time was, I have no business being in business. Because I know nothing, right?
Yeah.
And I read no business books. My husband is a businessman with an MBA, but I never ask for advice because it would never be the advice I actually want to hear. It probably wouldn't collide with what I think I'm going to do anyways. So I really have never looked for a lot of advice. I just keep my eyes on my own paper. But back in 2017, I was named Rochester's Business Person of the Year.
Oh, wow.
I remember being at the convention center. There were like, I don't know, 800 people sitting around at lunch tables and whatever, and I'm up at the head table, and there were two different groups. There was the group who had less than 50 employees and the group that had more than 50. I had more than 50. And so they don't tell you in advance if you win. So they call the winner of the less than 50, and the winner walks up to the podium, and he thanks his team, and he thanks his spouse, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, that's really smart. That's probably the way you should do that. Never in a million years think I'm ever winning, right? I was thinking, that's a good speech. And then they call my name for the other group. And it's like literally the podium was from me to you. And I stand up, and it's almost like in slow motion in my head, like, do what he did. Just say something smart, right? Do that. But then there was this other thing like, no, don't. This is an opportunity. Don't. So I got up there, and the first thing that I said is, if everybody would just push themselves away from the table for a moment, put your feet flat on the floor.
Oh, I love it.
Close your eyes. And I'm thinking, and so I led them in a breathing meditation for like a minute and a half. But I remember I closed my eyes, but I'm looking out, and it's like, oh my God, everyone's got their eyes closed. And this room is full of business people dressed in suits, and like, this is not my yoga group, right? But it just came through me. Like it was not, I kept thinking, it's not a good idea. But it happened. And it was like, it was just the right thing that I could have ever done, because that's who I am, and that's what breathe is. And if I had gotten up there and said like, oh, like, whatever I could have said that would have sounded real businessy.
Yeah.
It would have just been so fake. But I always remember that moment and looking out of the corner of my eye and thinking, oh my gosh, they've all got their eyes closed. And then when I had them open their eyes, there was this moment of silence, and it was like literally the air in the room was palpable. It was just really a sweet moment.
I think the world needs more of that, Cyndi. I think people crave authenticity. They crave real people. We're all humans. We all put our pants on the same way. Doesn't matter how fancy you are in your suit, doing $1 billion deals. We're all human beings, and we all need the same fundamental things with our mental and physical health. And what a cool story. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. That's cool.
That'd be something. I wish, did they have like video
Yeah,
coverage there?
Yeah,
You got to see 800 business owners just eyes closed, meditating.
It's actually somewhere. It might be like on Breathe's website somewhere, or it's on YouTube somewhere. So I'm not good at finding those things.
We
but
were there,
we'll have to check it out. No,
You'll find it.
If we were there, we would have captured it very well.
Oh yeah, I'm so not good at that, but someone did capture it. It is up there
Very cool.
somewhere. You will find it.
I love
That's
that.
awesome.
So I want to go back just a second to you talked about franchising and choosing not to franchise. And I like this discussion because I've had it with other business owners who have franchises, don't have franchises. And I think it goes back to self-awareness, talking about that and knowing what you actually want. We started our business as a real estate photography company. It's telling you shooting many houses in Rochester, and we are in a group of real estate photography companies across the country, and many of them are much larger and do the franchise model and are very successful with it. We chose that we wanted to be. Now we have two sides of our business. I was telling you, real estate photography and now commercial video production, to just be more of a whole agency. But we decided as a team that we want to be, kind of to your point, what Breathe has become, just this beautiful, like still very powerful, big part of the community, and not having to really stretch ourselves thin and try to do franchising and expand into different states, which is great. And that's a path for some people. But what I'm getting at is like knowing the difference. Like, what do you want as a business owner? Like, stop and meditate on it. Think about it. What do you actually want to do? And in a world where everyone's trying, it feels like everyone's trying to build 50, $100 million companies these days, would it be better to build something that still is very profitable and feeds your family, and you can build a great team, live a great life, but you're not always reaching for more and more and more. It's not that you're satisfied. I don't think any of us are ever satisfied, and should always be striving for more, but you're content and you're proud of what you've built. And I think we've come to that realization that that's what we want to be here in Rochester and now Buffalo and Syracuse, kind of all of upstate New York. But that if I'm being like completely transparent, I don't know if that was that was what I wanted to do when I first started my business. I was just a young, I was 23 when I started business, and I'm like, I want to dominate the world. I want to do big things. And just through life and growing through my 20s, now realize what I actually want and what we've built as a team, and what we're continuing to build, knowing exactly what we want to be now. So I don't know what the question I'm trying to get at here, but like, was there, and you kind of talked about it, that moment when you could have went down that path of franchising, but you decided to stay, like, what was it for you that made you make that decision?
Well, the reason that we actually did franchise when we did was, Breathe started quite honestly as a hobby. My kids were high school, college, my husband traveling, me not knowing, like, how am I going to spend my days? Like, what am I going to do? And so it started as just a place where I wanted to be able to go and offer what I really wished I had offered to me as a customer at one point. And as it caught on and as it grew, the request, people were coming from Buffalo and Syracuse and the west side of Rochester and the east side of Rochester and downtown. And we had people coming and saying, like, could you just open in Greece? Could you open in Syracuse? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe. I had no business being in business. So I'm like, I don't know. And at that time, my daughters were now through school. They were involved with the business. And we were working together, and we were having a lot of fun. And I said, okay, so maybe you could go to Abby, you could go to Syracuse, Carly, you could go to Buffalo, I could stay in Rochester. Do we want to do that? And we all looked at each other and said, no, that doesn't sound fun.
Yeah.
So just as, kind of highly motivated entrepreneurs do, I sort of just went on a mission, like, well, what is franchising and how do you do it? And who are the consultants out there? And so I ended up reaching out to one of the largest consulting companies for franchises. They were in Chicago. They did Aunt Annie's, Taco Bell, Subway.
Oh, wow.
So I made my initial connection, and then with a lot of vetting on their part, they eventually invited me out. And I took my daughters with me, and I just like spewed everything, right? Like, this is what we do, and this is how we do it. And then he just sat there, listened. And I said, well, I don't know. What do you think? Like, is it franchisable? And he's like, yeah, it's definitely franchisable. So I hired them. They led us through the process. Took about a year. I learned a lot because I knew nothing about it. And then I ran the franchises for 10 years. We sold them very selectively. I ran them with a team, and then sort of, like I explained, how we decided to dissolve them. But during that 10 years, I think you've already answered your own question too, Cam. You already said,
Yeah.
I kind of really feel that we just want to be something special.
Yep.
In upstate New York. We know that we could probably take on lots of locations, but you become more of a manager than an entrepreneur, because you've got the franchise's success becomes more as important or more important than your own success, because they make or break your own reputation. So that you have to do everything possible because you want to make them successful. Right. And so you take on all of their problems, all of their customer problems, all their operational problems. And then your own business, loses kind of like the best part of you. Yeah. I don't regret it because it grew me in a way that I would have never grown before. But I also have zero regrets about defranchising. That was like such a great decision. And I'm so happy that the franchisees chose it. I offered it, but they chose it.
Yeah, right.
And so I could move on without feeling anything about it and just sort of going back to being an entrepreneur, which feels so good.
That was a perfect answer. That's exactly what I was looking for. And again, I'm not trying to sway people from not franchising. All I'm saying is take some time to think about it, because they're successful and happy people in both arenas, and you can do whatever you want to do, but figure out what it is for you, because we're all different. So
yeah, I'll be honest, right? I've been thinking I was going to come back to this franchise question and a little bit about like the expansion aspect and the hunger for, striving for more. I don't do very well with that, right? That's something that I've never really been able to kind of wrap my head around, of like, if you're a business owner or you're leading a team, how do you balance, not striving for growth, or almost, not satisfying for what you have, but kind of being okay with not growing 24/7 to the biggest, baddest arenas, the biggest cities. Like, we've always talked about, oh, we're going to expand out to New York City, a bigger market, do all these things. I'm someone that's like, if we're not looking at the next biggest opportunity, then are we just missing out, right? So I'm asking you selfishly, personally, right? How do you balance that? Like, how do you go, you know what, I know that we need to grow, but at the same time, like, I got to put in enough work into my like starting point.
Yeah, I don't want to be misunderstood in saying that you don't want to grow, that I don't want to grow.
Right.
But there are a lot of different ways to grow.
Yep.
And so, I told you, like franchising and growing kind of wide, like that's growing wide. That was a really good idea, right? It was a super smart business idea, financially smart, but it didn't make me as happy as growing more organically. So what you don't know now, and you won't know it until you kind of keep evolving and looking back. Like if I looked back 10 years ago, I would not have said, oh, an area of growth is going to be longevity. I didn't care about longevity. I was young, right? You don't care about what you care about until it matters to you, until it's relevant.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that I would have grown into meditation, because it actually didn't matter to me until I got really sick from stress.
Yeah.
Right.
So you have no idea how, if you kind of keep your options open and keep yourself really malleable, you don't get stuck in such a wide structure that you're like literally you just don't have the ability to tap into what you care about anymore. It will surface itself, because that's what happens to entrepreneurs. And that's why entrepreneurs can never retire. Like I can't retire, because if I ever did, I'd be like a pain in the butt to everybody, because I'd be like, hey, you guys, you know what you could do with your business right now? Here, let me give you an idea. Like that is so annoying. That's why entrepreneurs have to have their own thing, because that's where they can channel that. Because think of all your ideas, like where are you going to put all that?
Yeah.
But you will grow in ways that are different than the obvious if you maintain some space for it. But if you're so maxed out and you don't have any space for it, you won't be able to do it.
Oh gosh, that hits like uncomfortably, because I'm listening. And I'm like, I don't think we often don't give ourselves enough space to grow. That's just something that we're trying to get better at as, leaders and stuff, is we're so in the weeds trying to grow and hit certain figures, and also on a passionate level hit certain types of video styles and creative new limits, that we often don't give ourselves enough space to be like, we got to like really dive into this, put our soul behind this.
Yep.
It's tough.
Well, here's the thing about that kind of creative energy, though. You can't just say, like, okay, we're going to have a meeting on Tuesday from 2 to 4, and we're going to come up with all these creative ideas. That's not how it works.
That's literally when our meetings are, by the way, so it's
really?
weird that you know that.
Yeah.
But okay,
No,
go
I don't
ahead.
know that. I told you I'm intuitive. But anyway, for me, I call it popcorn.
Popcorn.
Yeah. And the only way I get popcorn is when I take myself out of my real world.
Yes.
So for me, there are places like I go to Mexico, I look for a beach setting that I can just walk forever, or I look for nature. I just have to get away from everything. And then when I'm no longer thinking, it takes a few days, when I'm no longer focused on all the things, all of a sudden it's like, poop, poop.
Sandy, you're speaking into my soul right now.
Like popcorn. It's effervescent, right? It's just like, whoa.
I've never thought of it like that, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
When you're
and
walking.
that's what walks for you.
Shower thoughts, walking, vacations, you're right.
Yes.
When I'm on vacation, I come back from that vacation and I'm like, whoa, I know exactly what we need to do.
Yes. Those are the best times to make creative decisions, like really. And I think that is something that sort of flies in the face of what we're conditioned to think. We're thinking that we should have another meeting or we should really think about this. And it's like, you don't have to think about it. You have to get your thinking out of the way and then just, it's right there.
That's
like,
huge.
Obvious. This
and
is obvious.
Again, it ties back to that. And in my opinion, maybe that's just how I think about it, but the meditation practice, right? It's like, that's where you really stop the thinking, at least for me, right? My brain is always moving. And the only reason that I'm able to stop, or the only way I'm able to stop thinking, without going on long vacations in the short term is like 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes of just like stopping, just focusing on my inner self. And it's massive. So I agree.
And you're right. I mean, that's the daily practice of it. Like, that's just so, it is a pattern interrupt is what it is. It's because human brains are meant to be active. And that's why when someone says, oh, I can't meditate, my brain's too active, I'm like, that's like a humble brag, right? Everybody's brain is active.
Tell that to Keegan.
Welcome to being a human. So no, you're not different. And when you meditate, you're not going to stop having thoughts. So don't even expect that.
Right.
But what will happen is you'll have these little spaces, though, in between. Whereas you'll walk away sometimes and you'll be like, oh, you know what I really should do here? And it's been there the whole time. It just had a moment to pop up,
To see it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I guess this kind of ties in with everything we've been talking about already. Business is challenging. It is hard being an entrepreneur, and it is glorified these days on social media, at least in my opinion. Lots of people taking selfies on private jets and saying, oh, look at how much money I'm making. Well, you don't see behind the scenes. You don't see behind the curtain of what you mentally have to go through a lot of days, up and down. This is entrepreneurship, up, down, up, down. So I can already guess what you're going to say, but how do you personally deal with those ups and downs throughout your 22-year career? Meditation, yoga, to just make it through, because you just have to make it through.
Yeah. I don't want to give the impression that I, have this perfect solution. Yoga and meditation is currently, it's my bedrock, but it wasn't always. There were times when I was just struggling to keep the business alive and like pay my payroll and, pay my rent. And in those times, kind of, I guess you just kind of rely on like, well, what haven't I thought of, or what is the next idea? So I think it took me a while, and it took me actually getting very sick to realize that when I'm operating from that place of survival, I'm not sustainable. It would have never made it if I had not sort of had this big disruption where I had to find another way. And so me getting sick was like the best thing that ever happened to me, because it made me find another way. If that hadn't happened, I'm not sure that I would still be doing what I'm doing, because it burned me out. And not because it was, certainly there are challenges, but it was just, there was too much pressure that I was probably putting on myself, as well as the external pressures that were just part of making a business viable.
Right.
But I just think that self-care is incredibly underrated, especially when you really are sort of the driver of the direction of the business. Like, it's just so important that you're clear, that you're rested, that you are nourished mentally, physically, that you are showing up feeling like the best version of yourself. And then I've tried to explain this to my daughters who are now 39 and 41, and they've been with the business for a very long time. And like I said, I have no intention of retiring, but I am definitely moving some of my responsibilities elsewhere.
Sure.
And, as they are now moms of young kids and they are, like taking on other parts of the business themselves, and I'll listen to the problems, right? And then I'll gently say, okay, so let me just say this. It's not going to go away. This is the job. Whether you're a parent or whether you're a business owner, you really are a problem solver. And so rather than be like, oh my gosh, here's another problem, it's more like, okay, so what is the problem today? And then you just take it objectively, like, all right, how do I solve that?
Yeah.
Okay, how about this? And no business book is going to give you those answers either.
Right.
You have to be present. And then you're like, okay, what is the problem at hand right now? And what can I do for it? How can I impact it?
Yeah. And again, I know we're trying to wrap up, but these thoughts keep coming up when you're speaking, right? Talking about how when you got sick, you realized you were kind of operating from a place of survival. How do you shift to operating from a place of abundance? I think that's really tough for me. I do feel as though being a young entrepreneur that, and I'm sure many people can resonate, they do feel like constantly grinding gets them caught in a cycle of living from survival rather than living from abundance and being able to outpour to everyone. How do you change that?
When I talk to people who are, kind of have small staffs or entrepreneur running their own thing with very little help, I remember that very well. And I also know that what is the stumbling block between transitioning into delegation, right, is like how long it'll take to actually train someone to do what I need them to do, because I could just do it a whole lot faster.
Right.
Right? So a lot of businesses don't make that transition, and then they don't grow. You have to make that transition if you want to grow. And I'm not talking about growing wide. I'm just talking about keeping yourself in the right role. Your role is that of visionary, that of like thinker of like the popcorn.
Yeah.
You got to stay in that role. And doesn't mean you're not doing other roles, but when you start to find yourself like so deep into all of the things and you know that you need help, you know that you need to delegate, but you're holding off because it takes too long, you don't have the right person, you really just need it done now and you know you can do it yourself, you're really forfeiting growth.
Yep.
So you have to, and so for me, when I went from being just surviving to now really staying in my seat where I belong is when I really started to turn over parts. There are parts of my business that I really don't know how to do anymore. Like, I don't. If there's a software problem, I don't know. If it's an internet problem, I don't know. If it's an inventory problem, I don't know. I used to know all those things, but you have to like free up some of your mental energy to other people that you trust. And then it's important that you have them sort of dial in on that role. Let them make it replicable.
Yep.
Like in case they leave, right?
Yep.
You don't want to hold that against them, but you'd also like to know exactly what did you do. So maybe have it documented.
SOPs. Yep.
Yeah, but you don't need to keep it up here because what you need up here is space.
Right. And then again, I know they're just going to keep going, but building on that, it's like delegating and finding the next person. This is something that's really personal. We've been thinking about, hiring another creative so that we can free up my time so that I'm less producing and doing all these things. How do you kind of trust though, right? Trust in their ability to be able to handle that role. That's one thing, but also trust that like, it's a financial risk, right? You're bringing on another team member that's going to cut into your bottom line, and you have to sort of weigh those trade-offs of like, it's going to cost this amount per year on this, their salary, et cetera. But how do you make sure that you keep that opportunity, the stuff like they could really help your revenue grow in the forefront as well?
Yeah. So when you're out for your walk or wherever you get your mental space, get clear on the parts of your job that you're great at. That's so natural. No one taught you. You're just great at it. And then what are the parts of your job that you can do? And you can probably excel and do them well, but you had to really you got to figure it out. Those are the things to offload. Do what you're naturally great at, and then start to then create a role that takes these other pieces that you have to actually kind of work at, and what would that role look like for someone else? I have 70 employees.
Wow.
And yeah, and a lot of them are transient. You know, they work at the juice bar, they teach some yoga, like. But then I have a core team that's been there for a long time, and I know that they'll be there. And I didn't find any of those core people like through a classified ad, right? They're people either that I knew in life,
Yep.
or they were coming up through. I somewhere along the way got to know them either from class or just somewhere along the way. And I was like, I like the qualities of this person. They may not know how to do exactly this, but their qualities are what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go for that, and then I train them to do what I want them to do.
Yeah. That's
Exactly.
That's him right there in a nutshell, finding the good person first and then being able to
teaching the
teach them.
skills.
Yeah.
So Cyndi, I had no photography experience. Zero. I didn't know how to work a camera. I got my first camera. The body comes separate from the lens, and it took me more than 10 minutes to try to figure out how to put it. So I like to tell this story because now we obviously are doing a lot of high level stuff. You had no camera experience? I mean, very little.
No, nothing.
Keegan didn't. I mean, most of our team actually, nothing. But what we all have is we're good people at our core, and we care about others, and we care about helping people, and we work so good together. That's another big thing is chemistry. And we all learn from YouTube and courses and everything on the internet. And I could not preach it more. Find good people. You can train them how to do anything.
Yeah, yep. Especially, I mean, good people, and also people who have like a love for these particular tasks that you don't have a love for.
Yeah.
You want them to love that, and then they'll excel at that. And it'll take it off of your mind, and then your mind can be open to like how the next thing of growth is going to be something you don't even know what it is yet.
Yeah.
That's
no
what I
idea
wanted
what
to
it
touch on
is.
too, is like when we were talking about growth, it doesn't always have to be your company. It can be personally other things that you do in your life. Doors can open that you didn't even know were there. I think this podcast is a really good example of like, I really just started this. Number one, I wanted to, again, create a hub for young entrepreneurs, but also to connect with business owners around Rochester because that's networking. It gives us great opportunities to meet potential clients. And now I was sharing my vision with Keegan and Carter the other day about what this can actually turn into. I am so passionate about education, and the whole college discussion is a thing we'll have to save for another day. But everything I'm doing is free, and it'll stay free. And I believe that the education that I'm putting out there, not to like pat myself on the back, but is as good as what professors are teaching in business schools and people who are teaching who have never even started a business before. That is what lights me on fire. And this whole new avenue is a whole new growth opportunity for me, for Cam. And obviously we want to continue growing Real 3D to new heights and everything. But just for me personally, this is an avenue that's opened up that if you asked me 5 years ago when I became an entrepreneur, I had no idea that this would be something I'd be doing. So
Right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add one thing too, because something you said legitimately felt like it took a weight off my shoulders just now, which is that you hire somebody for those qualities and those things that you can do, but you want them, like they have a passion for it. They can excel in it. And by doing so, they're going to allow their passion to grow it themselves, as opposed to you feeling this pressure as the business owner to make them grow it, right? Or for them, like they're only going to grow it if you micromanage them or you really give them this avenue. It's like, ideally, right, if you do hiring properly, you're going to find someone that loves doing those tasks and will grow it their own way and help you in ways that you could never imagine. So for me, that I've always had that worry. I'm like, when we hire our next creative, which we're doing soon, be on the lookout, it's just this pressure of like, are they going to be able to produce as well as I can or shoot as well as Keegan can? And if they can't, what's going to happen? It's like, if we find someone with enough passion, they're going to try to grow it as much as they can because they love what they do.
Oh yeah, and it gives people a space to become their version of an entrepreneur. Like
Yep.
so many of my staff members, they are really. I mean, I do not micromanage anybody. Like they are sort of growing their end of it, their lane of the business. I oversee everything. I know everything that's going on, but they come to me and say, like, here's what I think I should do. I'm like, I think that's a great idea.
Initiative. I love it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
No, it's so good. What you said a minute ago, though, Kim, about like like with the podcast and the education and the feel like you want to like pay that forward.
Yeah.
Like in a word, that's purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, in terms of longevity, what keeps people inspired lifelong is purpose.
Yeah. I could do this forever.
Yeah.
I tell them like this is a lifelong thing for me now. This podcast obviously it's starting with entrepreneurship education, but I can see this going into just deep mindset, high performing individuals. I want to have some really cool people on the show. And again, going back, it's a reflection of me, going back to the business. Real Power, this brand that I'm building, is a reflection of my journey as an entrepreneur and everything inside of my brain that can hopefully help other people do whatever it is in their life. Yeah. So
I think you guys are in a great place, and I'm excited for you. It's really, I think you'll never feel like you worked a day in your life. You'll put in a ton of hours.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you'll never feel like you went to work.
Yeah.
That's
I
how I
totally
feel
agree.
about my job.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I love it. Let's wrap up with this question. Cyndi, take yourself back to your 20-year-old self, because that's, I think, our normal audience who watches this is younger, in their 20s. What would you tell 20-year-old Cyndi if you could go back in time at the start of your journey, all the things you've learned, all the wisdom you have today? What would you want to tell her?
I would say to trust my gut in all cases. Anytime I've ever been derailed, like gone down a road that I had to turn around and come back from, it's usually because whatever my own inner side, my gut, my voice, whatever was saying to me, I was thinking, well, someone else probably knows better. They're more educated, they're smarter, they're more successful. I probably should do that. And whenever I've done that, I've ended up kind of going down, finding a dead end, and coming back. So I now run everything through just basically like, how does this feel? And I use my brain as my sort of secondary check-in. But if my brain said do it, but my gut said don't, I'm not.
Yeah.
And so it probably used to be the other way around. So I would say, really start to make a connection. Everyone has intuition. Everyone has that feeling, like, yeah, I should really do this, or I really shouldn't. Everyone's got that. And the more you cultivate it, the stronger it becomes.
I was going to say, has it become a lot stronger from 20 to 65 now?
Yes. It's like anything. You feed it, it will grow. You ignore it and think that it's something like, that's not what I learned in school. You keep throwing it away, it's never going to get strong. But if you actually pay attention to it and you start to have like one positive experience after another when you've trusted yourself, you will start to build a lot of self-trust. And sometimes self-trust is knowing when you can't do something, when you don't want to do something. Like, of course you could franchise, of course you could. You can do anything you want, but will you really be happy? Those are questions that you guys are coming up against right now. And, so I think if I could go back, it really would be just really spend time just kind of cultivating.
Popcorn.
Yeah, popcorn and personal trust, like trust myself.
I love that.
Then you own all your own mistakes and you own your successes too.
Yeah. Feel it more deeply.
I can't think of a better way than to end it on that note. Cyndi, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for laying it all out there for the audience. And I want you to plug everything you're doing, because I know we got Breathe at Home. We got coaching you do. Anything you want to plug away right now, please.
I mean, I would just, Breathe is such a multifaceted sort of hub that I would just encourage anybody to come check us out. Whether you come to Pittsford or you go to breatheyoga.com, you can just sort of browse around and you'll find something that inspires you. It's a pretty cool, creative, one-of-a-kind business. There's something for everybody, truly.
Great. And if people want to get in touch with you about, meditation practice and any coaching.
Yeah, like my current passion really is keynote speaking on aging optimally. I really want to change the narrative. Like, you guys are not sitting here like thinking, man, I can't wait till I'm 65, right? No one thinks that. Nobody thinks that.
Yeah.
But the truth is like, I'm not sure that I've ever felt better, more true to who I am, more, I just feel great. And I'm loving my life at this age. And I call it the fourth quarter, what is the most exciting high stakes part of the game. And you're like, I look back at 20s and 30s, like, okay, there's career challenges, building families. And then, there's just a lot of like growth that happens that's not easy. And anybody who's sitting at the fourth quarter with me who's, thinking, oh, poor me, I'm old. First, I would say, today's the youngest you're ever going to be. So enjoy it, because tomorrow you're older.
Yep.
But secondly, what do you think all that work was for? I am so truly enjoying my life right now. And I just want other people approaching this fourth quarter to feel the same. Like, why shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Right.
I love it.
I want a part 2, if you're open to it. We got to have you come back. I want to talk more about emotional awareness, intelligence, meditation, all these things, and really dive into it. So if you're open, if you got the time, we'll do it again.
I would
soon.
love it. It's been a real pleasure.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. I know we certainly did. If you did, please share the show. Leave it a review if you could. It really helps the show grow. If you have a young, aspiring entrepreneur in your family or close circles that is trying to just get things going, share the show with them. I think it'll really help them. And the more people we can help, the better. So until next time, take care. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.